Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is One Piece East Blue Saga Syrup Village Arc, Episode 13, The Terrifying Duo Nyaban Brothers versus Zoro. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary of exactly what happens within this episode. So we pick up where the previous episode left off on our correct shore with Zoro and Luffy arriving. Django, of course, is worried about Captain Kuro, who is impatient, and so he hypnotizes his crewmates to believe that they are stronger than they actually are. And Zoro, Nami, Usopp, they kind of watch this going, what difference is it going to make to let them believe they're strong? But then one of them, while believing they're strong, ends up basically punching a cliff and taking a chunk out of it, which lets them know that the hypnotism worked. However, it also happened to work on Luffy. Luffy then uses his Gatling attack and busts his way through them, and then he runs right past all of the fleeing pirates, straight past Django, who's cringing, and goes straight for the mast of the ship, which he pulls off, planning to use it against the Black Cat pirates. Django, to stop him, immediately, very quickly, just hypnotizes him to fall asleep, and he does fall backwards, falling asleep, landing under the mast, while the mast then not the mast, the figurehead, the front part of the ship. Sorry, that's my bad. The front part of the ship, he pulls off the figurehead with the little cat head, and then while he falls asleep, it falls and causes damage to the crew. This is when the Nyabem brothers arrive, Bucci and Sham, who then are ordered by Django as the trump card to go ahead and attack Zoro, who is standing at the top of the slope so that they can get past. At first, they pretend to be weak, but then they do continue to run towards Zoro, tricking him, while Sham tricks him and manages to disarm him of two of his swords. He then's forced to fight with one sword, but he ends up getting trapped by Sham's speed, and then Butchie tries to crush him, but he manages to escape that, and basically starts having to defend himself against both of the Niamban brothers. Usopp tries to interfere in the fight. However, knowing how weak he is, Zoro takes the shot instead, ending up clawed in the chest for his troubles before going back to defending himself. While this is ongoing, we have Kaya waking up from a nightmare about Usopp trying to kidnap her and being evil, and she goes to look for Klahadore and instead finds Mary on the floor in a pool of blood because he was injured by Kuro in the last episode. Mary informs her about what happened and Klahadore's goal to steal her fortune and tells her to go find him, give him the fortune. It's not worth her life, and he believes that that will be an option for peace. So Kaya then leaves the house, which the vegetable children are watching the house. We have onion, carrot, and bell pepper. um, are watching, so then they go to follow her because they also saw Klahadore leaving that morning and realize that Usopp probably wasn't lying, just like Kaya has realized that he is not lying. And then at the very end of the episode, while Zoro is fighting off Butchie and Sham, Klahadore or Kuro does arrive at the top of the slope, and we kind of zoom in on each of the players in the fight while he figures out what's going on, and that is the cliffhanger we end this episode on. So now that we've been reminded about what happens in the episode, it's time to rank the episode. As always, we rank on our two lists, our mostly objective ranking list and the personal ranking list. So we'll start with our mostly objective rank values, as we always do, and once again, I've highlighted those that I felt applied to this episode. The first one is, of course, we have the introduction of our single arc supporting characters, which in this case are Zoro's opponents, Sham and Bucci. Now, I did debate on whether to count them as one, the Nyambem brothers, or whether to count them separately as Sham and Bucci. And while they do fight together sometimes, I also know that there is some scenes where they are separate, like in this case, Sham started the fight, and I know later once Sham is out of the fight, Bucci will be on his own, so I decided ultimately to count them separately just because they aren't always together, though really they are more of a duo. We then get our single arc main character growth in Kaya, who realizes that she was wrong about Usopp, accepts responsibility for that, and decides to take into her own hands her fate and try to resolve things peacefully with Klahadore slash Captain Kuro when she leaves the mansion. And given that she is ill and frail and emotionally weak, as her illness and frailty was caused by her inability to process the emotions of her parents' deaths, is character growth, because this wouldn't be something that you would expect for a weaker character like her to be able to do, and yet she is finding that inner strength to do so, leaving the mansion with that in mind, and so that is worth 2 points. And then last but not least, we have our multi-arc main character growth, and that is the fact that Luffy has premiered a new attack, which is our Gamo Gamo no Gatling, which going forward I will just refer to as Gatling. But anytime there is a new attack, that is growth, and that brings this episode, for our mostly objective ranking, as there are no negatives, to 8 out of 10. Alright, so with a reminder of our arc rankings so far, on our mostly objective ranking, in first place we have the world's strongest weirdo, Django the Hypnotist. This episode came in second, the terrifying duo, Nyabam Brothers versus Zoro. Then we have Honorable Liar, Captain Usopp. Revealing the conspiracy, the pirate caretaker, Captain Kuro. And then in fifth, the the Black Cat pirate crew battle on the slope. And so we come to the personal ranking. So I love how vulnerable Luffy is to hypnosis, because it seems to always end up with a somewhat comedic scenario. For example, obviously Janko was making his crew stronger, but he accidentally made his enemies stronger. So Luffy then does his Gatling, defeats most of them. They then try to flee from him, and instead of continuing to attack, he just runs right by them, and then decides to focus his strength and attention on the figurehead and taking that off of the ship, the entire front part of it, because he's so susceptible to hypnosis, being able to be hypnotized to sleep pretty much instantly. And Django himself didn't even hypnotize himself this time, which is rare for him because he usually does. But it still ends up with a successful attack anyways, as he does fall backwards, which then has the figurehead landing on a large portion of the crew anyways. Highest part in this, I think it's very naive thinking of Mary, given how absolutely merciless Klahadore was when he attacked him, to assume that sending Kaya after Klahadore to give away her fortune is somehow going to save her life. He is a pirate, the bad kind. He attacked him unprovoked for no real reason other than that he wanted to. And so for him to assume that Klahadore's not going to kill Kaya on sight, or as soon as she has handed over her fortune, very naive thinking on Mary's part. And then, of course, we have Kaya, who basically wakes up from a nightmare of Usopp being evil, only to find out that the person that he was the message he was trying to give her, that he was trying to protect her from, is actually the bad guy, as Mary is able to, what is the word I'm looking for? Corroborate the story that Usopp was telling. And honestly, not fond of that plot, but it makes sense for the characters, which is why it's not a negative objectively. But just for me personally, I'm like, consequences of Usopp's actions with her not believing him, like no one believing him. But also you can see how it affects Kaya to know that she was so unkind to Usopp, even having like the nightmare about Usopp, and yet finding out then that he was right and he was trying to protect her. We then have, of course, Sham and Bucci, which are more comedic characters. So even though it's a fight, it is meant more for comedy, I think. Like we have Sham starting the fight. Like they both play, "Oh my God, we're so scared of Zoro." And then Sham runs towards him like completely defenseless, playing weak and afraid. And then literally as soon as he gets close enough, it's like insta attack, steals the swords. Zoro, realizing their strength, starts fighting, and then Usopp, his needless interference leads to Zoro not only taking a lead ball to the back, but also getting slashed on the front, which I've mentioned that at this point, I'm not fond of Usopp yet. I do like Usopp later in the series, like he grows on me, but right now in this introduction arc, I'm not overly fond, and this is one of the reasons why I'm not overly fond. Like, he was told to sit aside with Nami. He decided he wanted to interfere, even though, and then it was left to like Zoro essentially to take the hit to protect him, because if he hadn't taken the hit, then, the target would have changed, or one of them could have gone after Usopp, who has no chance whatsoever of trying to fight them. On the other hand, though, Usopp is kind of like a sniper role, and that is kind of what a sniper is meant to do, to be more in the distance and to snipe. Except because the lead bullets wouldn't actually kill either of them, and there were two enemies, in this case, it's safer for Zoro to keep both of their attention on him, because if one of their attention strayed to change targets, Usopp would be done, and there would be no continuing journey with him in the crew, unfortunately. So like I said, he basically interfered needlessly and ended up putting Zoro at a disadvantage by having him be injured, which I did not enjoy. But I do like the comedy that we started with Luffy's little battle that never was because he was put to sleep, and with Zoro's initial kind of confusion on what to do with these two seeming buffoons who actually end up being incredibly strong, or stronger than expected at least. So for those reasons, there were some negatives for me personally, there were some positives for me personally, and ultimately I just decided to average everything out and give it a 5 out of 10 score, which brings our list to Battle, the Black Cat Pirate Crew, Battle on the Slope in first place. The World's Strongest Weirdo, Django the Hypnotist in second. This episode was third, The Terrifying Duo, Nyaban Brothers versus Zoro. Fourth place, Honorable Liar, Captain Usopp. And then in fifth place, Revealing the Conspiracy, the Pirate Caretaker, Captain Kuro. Which brings us to our saga ranking so far, which is where we are ranking each of the arcs within the saga against each other. So far in the current saga, we have completed 2 arcs and are currently on the third. So as a reminder of our mostly objective ranking so far, we have Romance Dawn arc in first place with a score of 86.67%. Orange Town arc in second place with 76%. And Syrup Village arc so far has gained 36 points out of a possible 100. We then have our personal ranking where Orange Town arc was actually in first place, and that was with a score of 74%. The Romance Dawn arc was in second place with 66.67%, and Syrup Village so far has earned 27 points out of a possible maximum of 100 points. Which then brings us to our final segment, which is the series ranking so far, and this is where we are going to be ranking each of the sagas against each other. Starting, of course, with our East Blue Saga, which we are partway through. And so far, on our mostly objective ranking with the 2 completed arcs, it has a score of 16 out of 80. And on the personal side, it has a score of 11 out of 80. With that, we've now rewatched and ranked One Piece East Blue Saga Syrup Village Arc Episode 13, The Terrifying Duo, Yabam Brothers versus Zoro. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.